Tonight, speaking to us, Brother Ethan Courtemanche. He's been here a time or two. He's come home with me a few times. You know, I think Jalen said it best Monday night. There's lots of embarrassing stories I'd like to tell, but most of them involve me as well as him. And I think the same can be said of us here tonight. But I'm looking forward to hearing him. I've heard him speak a few times at school and other places. A dear friend of mine. He's going to be another roommate of mine, sweet mate right across the hall. So looking forward to a wonderful semester. He's going to wrap up our meeting here tonight with the song, When We All Get to Heaven. A powerful song. Looking forward to hearing a good message from him here tonight.
I want to start off by once again thanking the elders and everyone here, allowing me just to come here and just share a little bit of what I've studied throughout this week and the past month. When Bradley first told us about this topic, you could tell that he was bummed out that there was not going to be a VBS, but he wanted to do something for y'all. He showed the love that y'all all have for the gospel and how we can share it with you. As I was growing up in the church, the first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to lead singing. We had this thing called Singing in the Steeple, and what it is, we would go up to this, after services, we would go up into the steeple with just the youth group, and we'd take out these songbooks, or maybe sometimes just in the dark, and we'd just sit really close together and sing praises unto God. One of the best things you could do, and as you went around the room, the young men would take turns leading songs. They'd pick a song out, they'd say the number, and then they'd sing their song, and the older men would help them. But as a young kid, around the age of 8, 9, 10, I thought this was the best thing in the world. I can lead singing. Everyone knows I'm an enthusiastic singer when it comes down to it. And so going through this gospel meeting and Bradley saying that we're going to do it over songs, it filled my young child heart. But one of the things that I love when we get to choose songs is ones that normally happen when you choose the ones that mean a lot to you. On Sunday night, Kyle chose 10,000 Angels because that was one of his favorite. And this one is a favorite of mine. When We All Get to Heaven is such a powerful topic and just a title in itself. One that should bring you joy, one that should make you just feel so good to think about what could happen. What happens when we do get to heaven? We're going to go through the verses once again. We're going to read the verses, and then I want us to be able to take 4 takeaways from the song itself. Verse 1 says, "Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing His mercy and His grace, and the mansions bright and blessed, He'll prepare for us a place. While we walk the pilgrim pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow, not a sigh. Let us then be true and faithful, trusting, serving every day. Just one glimpse of Him in glory will the toils of life repay. Onward to the prize before us, soon His beauty we'll behold. Soon the pearly gates will open, we shall tread the streets of gold." As our brother has already mentioned as we were doing the Pew Packers, this Bible, this one book, contains 66 different books in itself. And they all come together to form this one powerful message. And looking at this song, I was trying to find what would be a main verse that I could use, that I could go back to and relate to this song. And as I thought about it, I couldn't just choose one. There were so many that could apply to the title, When We Could All Get to Heaven. Because when you look at this book, it's preparing us for that moment. It shows us when God creates the heavens and the earth, He shows us the first sin that men ever partook in. We see the rise and the fall of kings. We see nations rise and fall. We see Christ come into the world. And eventually in Matthew chapter 7 or 27, we're going to start there this evening. And in Matthew chapter 27, we see the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. A lot of people thought at this point when Jesus was dying on the cross and He had His arms spread out for me and for you, they thought it was the end of the story. They saw the man hanging up on the cross and said He cannot save Himself, so this is the end. This is when His prophets are going to be scattered. We have finally destroyed Him. And it gets to the point when Jesus Christ is up on that cross. In verse 46 of chapter 27, He says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the most gut-wrenching, heartfelt quotes from Jesus Christ Himself that you'll ever read. Is when at that point that God is no longer with him because He has the sins of the world upon His shoulders. Not just the people that were sitting there at the foot of the cross who had nailed him to it, not just his mother, but the man who's standing up before you this evening, for everyone sitting in the pew and those who are outside listening on the radio. Our sins were on his shoulder that day. Our sins are what caused him to have to be separated from his Father. The one person that he could always count on. He had to be separated from him because of us. Because he loved us. What a day of rejoicing that's going to be. We see how he is crucified, we see how he dies, and we see how he is raised from the dead as we continue on throughout the book. And you eventually get to the part where he has finally given his last commands to the disciples and he's taken up into heaven. But what does that mean for us? The first thing I want to take away from this song is Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. And that fact, we must rejoice in it. Yes, we don't have Jesus here living on this earth, but because of his death, because of his sacrifice, one day we're going to be able to walk side by side with Jesus Christ. One day we're going to be able to look at God face to face and he's going to welcome us home. One day we'll be able to answer some of those questions that people ask us. If you could choose 3 people in the Bible to listen to, who would you listen to? Some say Peter, some say Paul. But in the end, when we get to the heaven, we'll be able to listen to everyone. We'll be able to swap stories. And that is just such a tremendous thing. In John chapter 14 and verse 3, it says, "And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." Jesus Christ says, I'm going away for a short time. I will come back to get you. And then we're going to go to this place together. We're going to go to a place that is full of wonder and amazement, full of a place that we're never going to experience heartache. We're going to go to a place where we don't experience death. It's going to be one of the best things that we'll ever partake in, and here on earth we'll never fully be able to imagine. How do we get there? We can talk about how we're going to get to heaven, and we can talk about what Jesus Christ did on the cross for us, but that's only going to get so far. He's left us a choice on how we are going to follow him. Are we going to die to ourselves? Are we going to do exactly what Galatians 2 verse 20 says? For I have been crucified with Christ. Have we gone to that cross ourselves? Have we died to our old lives? Have we taken that sin and said, we are no longer partaking this? The devil has no hold on me. When we rise out of the water after we were fully submerged in it, and we represent that we are following Jesus and we're beginning a new life. What are we doing after that? Are we living the life that Christ has called us to be as Christians? What does that life entail? What does being a Christian represent? When I look at verse 2 of when we all get to heaven, the one thing that sticks out to me is when it's talking about the clouds, and the road that we are traveling on is going to be rough. As we sung earlier, This Little Light of Mine, it's a catchy tune. It's something that kids will be able to understand, but you look at the meaning of them. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, I'm going to let it shine, I'm going to let it shine. Easy words to say in a song, very hard to do in real life. How many times do we go outside of this church building, we go out into the world, and we get into Walmart, we go into our schools, and we kind of just take our light and put it under a bushel. We don't show people that we are Christians. Do we act the way that we do here with our brothers and sisters? Do we let that light shine? But when you get to the next part of that song, won't let Satan blow it out. You think about the storms and you think about the tribulations that we have to deal with in life. You think about all the things that are going on in the world right now. You think about being separated from your loved ones during quarantine. You think about the sins that you've committed in your life. And the list could just go on, and I could stay up here all day just talking about the storms and trials that we face in life. but there is hope. In Matthew chapter 7 and verse 13, it says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction." Ethan, you just said that there's hope, but you're saying that the way to destruction is wide and easy to partake in. Yes. That is the way that the world is going. The easy way leads to destruction. We can get on that path that we can live a life full of ease, but in the end it's going to lead to destruction. And those who enter it are many. And if you continue that, when it talks about the narrow gate, it says very few are going to find it. I want to be one of those few that find it, but I also want as many people to get there as possible. In James chapter 1 and verse 2 through 4, it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Count it all joy. That's something I've always struggled with reading this verse. You're telling me that when I face trials in my life, I'm supposed to find joy? How can I turn this bad thing around in my life? How can I use this to better further the kingdom of God? We all have experience in our lives, and we're not the only ones that ever has to deal with those experiences. There are many people out there who have to deal with divorce. There are many people out there who have to deal with the loss of a loved one. You may be that person in their lives that could help them through that time. You can show them the way to Christ. You can show them how to continue moving on. In John chapter 16, verse 33, it says, "I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Jesus never says to disciples or to anyone that followed him, look, once you follow me, you're going to have an easy life. Once you follow me, I'm going to set you up and you're going to be nice and comfortable and you're going to be laid back. You're going to have everything provided for you in life and everything's going to be just fine and dandy. He says the exact opposite thing almost. He says, look, you are going to face tribulation. But if you're focused on me, if you are working towards me, you are going to find peace. You are going to find understanding. You are going to find comfort. You will be able to make it through every single trial and tribulation that you have to go through. 1 Peter 4 and verses 12 through 13. "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice in so far as you share Christ's suffering, that you may also rejoice and be glad when His glory is revealed." At the end of a race, you're going to receive a prize. But that race is not easy to partake in. You have to push yourself more than what you think you're going to just to finish this race. We are all running our own race, and that is called life. We're all going towards that finish line. And the thing that's different about the race of life compared to a race that we know is that anyone who finishes in the way that they ought to is going to get that prize. It's such a wonderful prize. I don't know about you, but just thinking about standing before the judgment seat of Christ. You've passed from this earth, or when Jesus is coming again, you're standing before Him, and all these books are open, and these names are being called out, those of the saved, and you standing before God, and He calls your name, and He says, "Come home." That gives me chills just thinking about it, knowing that He is calling me to come home and live with Him for eternity. Forever sounds far more than we can fathom, because we think in human standards, and we think of 100 years being a long time or forever, but this is eternity. There is no end to it. The prize is never going to not be ours anymore. once Jesus calls us to Him so that we can partake in it. The third thing that we can take away from this song is we have to stay focused on Christ. I kind of grouped the last two verses together. And one section says, just one glimpse. And we talk about the glimpse, just being able to see heaven, see the pearly gates, see the street of gold. Now, I don't know about you, but the most pearls I've seen in one sitting is something on a necklace. These are ginormous gates we're talking about that are full of pearls. We're going to see this ginormous road paved in gold. Just one glimpse of heaven and His glory is going to repay all the trials and tribulations that we had to face on this earth. Yes, the time here on earth is difficult. Yes, we have to deal with things that we would rather not have to deal with. We are going to hurt, but in the end, it is going to be worth it. In Proverbs chapter 3 and verses 5 through 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. My understanding is that I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. The only person that I know that's perfect is Jesus Christ, and He died and went to heaven to prepare a place for me. And I know that one day He's going to come back, and He's going to call on all those who have followed Him. And He's going to look at them and say, come home. In verse 6 it says, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. We don't have to go through life alone. As we travel down that narrow road and as we travel towards that narrow gate, Jesus is right there, and He's walking side by side, hand in hand with us. As we stumble, He's going to pick us back up. As we cry, He's going to wipe away any tears that we have, and He's going to comfort us. He's going to lend us any strength that He can so that we can get up and we can keep facing the devil and showing the devil that he has no power over us. Why is that? Because Christ is in our lives. Because Christ is what we are focused on. The verse that was already read for us today, Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4. It says, He will wipe away every tear from your eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. I can't fathom a world where I don't have to deal with the loss of a loved one. I can't imagine a world where people aren't dying on the streets every day due to hunger, where people are homelessness, where people feel like they're not loved, where people feel full of anxiety just having to deal with certain issues in life. Because that's the world that we are living in. That's the world that we have to face each and every day when we turn on the news and we look through social media and we look at our phones. But there's going to come a place and there's going to come a time where none of those things are going to happen. They will never be in our lives anymore. If you will, turn to Matthew chapter 24. We will spend the majority of what we have left in this, and then we'll go back towards the end of Matthew. The last thing I want to look at this evening is when you look at the chorus. And yes, it's such a great song where we can rejoice and we can talk about how when we're all going to get to heaven. But the thing that we have to understand about this song and what it represents that there is an end coming soon. We can all dream of that day and we can all be wishing for it to come, but we have to realize whether by us dying, whether us running out of breath, or by the Lord's coming, there's going to be an end for each and every one of us here in this auditorium and outside of these walls. If you're listening or not to this sermon, there is going to come an end for you. Are we ready for that day to come? Are we ready for a time when we have to face that judgment seat? When Jesus comes back? In Matthew 24 in verse 14. It says, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout all the whole world as a testimony to all nations." Sorry, that's verse 14. Verse 13. "But the one who endures to the end will be saved." And as you skip on down to verse 36, "But concerning that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only." And then verse 44. "Therefore you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." There's one person who knows when the end is coming. It's not me. It's not Bradley. It's not his father. It's not his mother. It's not Brother Bill. It's no one here on this earth, not even Jesus Christ, who came and died for our sins, but God. And one day He's going to look at Jesus and say, "Bring them home." He's going to say, "It's time to go back. It's time for it to end." Are we truly ready for that? And that's a serious question we have to ask ourselves. Are we ready for that day to come? Are we ready to sing a song when we all get to heaven? Or are we going to be looking around as Jesus comes down and we aren't singing that in song, but in fact we're saying, "Hide us, we're not ready"? Because I can tell you for a fact that some people are singing, "We're going to heaven," and are rejoicing in it. There are many who are going to realize that that's not where they're going to end up. That's what the Bible tells us. Are we prepared to receive the promise that Christ has given us? We go back to Matthew chapter 27. We're going to read again the end of verse 46 and continue on, and it says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And then in verse 50, "And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit." One of the most powerful things that someone could ever do is to go through all that humiliation, to go through all that mocking, to go through every single beating that he went through, from the thorns being put on his head to the marks on his back, to having to carry his own cross, and eventually being away from his Father. And when he cries, "It is finished," and he gives himself up for us, that is the greatest sacrifice that I have ever known. We did nothing to deserve him to die on that cross. But he loved us so much that he was willing to do that. He was willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice so that one day we can sing the song when we all get to heaven. So that we can come together as a family and as a body under Christ and sing together, to lift praises unto Christ. The question I want you to leave with this evening is, are you ready? Heaven's going to come. But are you ready for that day? You may be here in this auditorium tonight and you may realize that you aren't ready. You may realize that you haven't done what Christ has asked you to and how to live your life. You can make that change this evening. It's not my invitation, but it's the Lord's. At any moment in your life when you are ready to accept Christ into baptism and to start walking His life, He's going to be there and He's going to help you down that path. There are many people here who will love you and pray with you and help you in any way to start that journey. But there may be some in the auditorium who are listening to this right now, and you realize that maybe you have gone off the narrow way. You have left that narrow path and you are no longer asking God for strength. You're no longer asking God to be with you in your life. You can make that change this evening as we stand and as we sing.